The sun had barely risen over the jagged horizon of Pueblo, Colorado, when Thea Wilson stepped off the train, her weathered guitar case clutched in one hand and a small satchel in the other. The year was 1885, and the promise of a new beginning after so many endings hung in the dust-filled air. The journey west had been her last resort after the fire claimed both her family's Tennessee farm and her parents' just 3 months prior. A letter from her mother's cousin offering her a position at the local hotel had been her salvation, a chance to rebuild in a place where memories wouldn't haunt her with every step. Pueblo was larger than she'd expected, the railroad bringing industry and people to what had once been little more than an outpost. Thea adjusted her simple blue dress, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear as she took in the sights and sounds of her new home. The hotel wasn't hard to find, a 3-story building with Silver Star Hotel painted in faded gold lettering. "You must be Theodora," a plump woman with graying hair greeted her at the front desk. "Martha's written all about you. I'm Esther Jenkins. I run this establishment with my husband Henry." "Just Thea, madam," she replied. "Thank you for taking me in." "Nonsense, child. Your mother was like a sister to Martha. We're happy to have you." Esther led her up a narrow staircase to a small but clean room on the 3rd floor. "You'll help with serving in the dining room, cleaning rooms, and whatever else needs doing. Sunday evenings, though, those are yours. Martha mentioned you play." She nodded at the guitar case. Thea smiled for the first time since arriving. "Yes, madam. My father taught me." "Good. We have music here on Sundays sometimes. Might be a way for you to make extra." Esther patted her shoulder. "Rest today. You start tomorrow." Left alone, Thea unpacked her meager belongings, carefully removing her father's guitar from its case. The polished wood gleamed in the afternoon light as she ran her fingers over the strings, a soft chord filling the quiet room. This instrument and her mother's silver locket were all she had left of her previous life. She played softly, a melody her father had taught her, letting the familiar notes wash over her like a comforting embrace. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Thea had steeled herself for her new reality. She worked diligently, learning the rhythms of the hotel. Guests came and went, businessmen, families heading further west, and the occasional cowhand passing through. She kept to herself mostly, speaking when spoken to, smiling politely but building no connections. 3 weeks into her time in Pueblo, Thea was serving breakfast when a commotion erupted outside. She peered through the window to see a crowd gathering. Curiosity got the better of her, and with Esther's permission, she stepped out to investigate. "Annual rodeo starts tomorrow," an elderly man explained when he noticed her confusion. "Cowboys coming in from all over the territory. Best 3 days of the year if you ask me." That evening, the dining room was packed with new arrivals. Thea moved efficiently between tables until a boisterous group of cowboys entered, bringing with them laughter and the scent of leather and open plains. She couldn't help but notice one in particular, tall with broad shoulders and sun-bronzed skin. Unlike his rowdy companions, he removed his hat upon entering, revealing hair the color of wheat fields. "5 plates of whatever's hot," one of the men called out. Thea approached their table, notepad in hand. "The stew's fresh tonight, gentlemen. Comes with cornbread." "That'll do fine, miss," said the quieter one, the one she'd noticed. His eyes met hers, a clear, steady blue that reminded her of summer skies. "Thank you kindly." "Nathan, you sweet talking already," one of his companions laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. Nathan shook his head, a slight flush coloring his tanned cheeks. "Pay no attention to Luke. Man doesn't know the difference between manners and flirtation." Thea felt a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "I'll get your stew," she said, turning away quickly before he could see the warmth spreading across her face. Throughout the meal, she found her gaze drifting toward his table. The man, Nathan, seemed different from the others. He laughed with his friends but didn't engage in their crude jokes or boisterous behavior. When he caught her looking once, he offered a small, genuine smile that sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. As the dining room began to clear, Nathan approached the counter where Thea was tallying bills. "Miss, I was wondering if you might know of any quiet spots in town. Been on the trail 3 weeks straight, and I could use some peace before tomorrow's events." Thea hesitated. "There's a small garden behind the church. Most folks don't know about it. It's peaceful there." "Much obliged," he said, then paused. "I'm Nathan Irving, by the way, from a ranch north of Denver." "Thea Wilson," she replied simply. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Wilson." He tipped his hat slightly. "Perhaps I'll see you at the rodeo tomorrow. I'm working," she said, then added, "but Mrs. Jenkins mentioned I might have the evening off to see some of it." His smile widened. "Then perhaps our paths will cross again." After he left, Esther appeared beside her. "That one's different," she observed. "Nathan Irving's got quite the reputation as a horseman. They say he's the best bronc rider in the territory." "Is that so?" Thea tried to sound disinterested. Esther wasn't fooled. Known his family for years. Good people. His father built one of the most successful ranches in Colorado before passing last year. Nathan runs it now with his older brother. That night, Thea found herself thinking about Nathan's kind eyes and gentle manner as she readied for bed. She chided herself for such foolishness. She'd come to Pueblo to build a new life, not to lose her head over the first handsome cowboy who showed her courtesy. The next day brought a flurry of activity as visitors flooded into town for the rodeo. Thea worked tirelessly, but by late afternoon, Esther shooed her away. "Go on, girl. You've earned some fun. The main events are starting soon." Thea changed into her one nice dress of forest green that complemented her auburn hair and made her way to the rodeo grounds at the edge of town. The atmosphere was electric, with children running about, vendors selling everything from candy to ribbons, and a makeshift stage where a small band played lively tunes. She found a spot on the wooden stands and watched in amazement as men performed feats of skill and bravery, roping calves, racing barrels, and riding bucking horses. When Nathan's name was announced for bronc riding, her heart inexplicably quickened. He entered the arena astride a massive buckskin horse that seemed determined to throw him to the dirt. But Nathan moved as one with the animal, adjusting to each violent buck with a grace that left the crowd cheering. When the timer sounded, he dismounted smoothly and waved his hat to the enthusiastic audience. "That's the best riding I've seen in 20 years, commented an elderly woman beside Thea. As dusk fell, colored lanterns were lit throughout the grounds, casting everything in a warm, magical glow. Thea wandered through the festivities, stopping occasionally to listen to musicians or watch impromptu dancing. "Miss Wilson." She turned to find Nathan standing behind her, still in his riding clothes but cleaned up, his hat held respectfully in his hands. "Mr. Irving. Congratulations on your ride. You watched." He seemed genuinely pleased. "It was impressive," she admitted. "Would you care to walk with me?" he asked. "The view of the lights from the hill is something to see." Propriety told her to decline, but something in his earnest expression compelled her to accept. Just for a short while. They walked side by side, a respectable distance between them, toward a gentle slope overlooking the fairgrounds. The colored lights reflected in the waters of the Arkansas River beyond, creating twin ribbons of color against the darkening sky. "How long have you been in Pueblo?" Nathan asked as they found a spot to observe the scene below. "Just under a month," Thea replied. "I'm from Tennessee originally." "That's a long way to travel alone." "Sometimes starting over requires distance," she said softly. He nodded as if he understood perfectly. "I know something about that. After my father died, everything changed. The ranch was suddenly mine to run alongside my brother. Some days I still feel like I'm pretending to know what I'm doing." His honesty surprised her. "I doubt anyone watching you today would think that. Riding's different. That's something I've understood since I was a boy." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Mrs. Jenkins mentioned you play guitar." "Music's always been something I wished I had talent for." "My father taught me," Thea said, surprised that Esther had mentioned it to him. "It's comforting, like having a piece of home with me. Would you play something sometime? I'd like to hear it." The request was sincere, without pretense, and Thea found herself nodding before she could think better of it. "Perhaps Sunday evening. Mrs. Jenkins said I might play in the hotel parlor then. I look forward to it." He smiled, and in the lantern light, his face held a warmth that made Thea momentarily forget the losses that had brought her west. They talked easily as the evening deepened, discovering shared interests in books and a mutual love of open spaces. Nathan spoke of his ranch, the Double I, with pride and passion that Thea found herself envying. To have something so concrete to build and nurture seemed a gift. "I should get back," she said finally, aware of how long they'd been away from the crowds. "Of course." He offered his arm, which she took after only slight hesitation. As they walked back toward the fairgrounds, the band struck up a waltz, and couples began to dance in a cleared area near the stage. Nathan stopped, turning to her with a question in his eyes. "One dance?" he asked. "I promise I'm better at it than most cowboys." Thea hesitated. She hadn't danced since before her parents died, hadn't wanted to, but the music called to her, and Nathan's gentle presence had somehow eased the constant ache of grief she'd carried west with her. "One dance," she agreed. His hand at her waist was respectful, his movements confident as he guided her through the steps. For those brief moments, Thea allowed herself to simply exist in the joy of movement and music, the colored lights swirling around them like fireflies. When the dance ended, Nathan escorted her back to the hotel, stopping at the entrance. "Thank you for sharing the evening with me, Miss Wilson," he said. "I hope to see you Sunday." "Good night, Mr. Irving," she replied, surprised by the reluctance she felt to end their time together. Inside, Esther was waiting with a knowing look that Thea pretended not to see as she hurried upstairs, her cheeks flushed with more than the cool night air. The rodeo continued for 2 more days, during which Thea caught only glimpses of Nathan competing or with his friends. He won the bronc riding championship and placed second in calf roping, cementing his reputation as one of the territory's finest cowboys. On Sunday evening, Thea brought her guitar to the hotel parlor with uncharacteristic nervousness. She'd played for strangers before, but knowing Nathan might attend made her fingers tremble slightly as she tuned the instrument. By 7 o'clock, a small crowd had gathered, hotel guests, a few locals, and to her simultaneous relief and anxiety, Nathan, who sat in a chair near the back. He nodded in greeting, his eyes warm with encouragement. Thea began with a folk song her father had loved, her clear voice filling the room as her fingers found the familiar chords. She sang of mountains and valleys, of love and loss, letting the music carry her beyond her self-consciousness. When she finished, the applause was genuine, and she moved into another song, then another. Between songs, she noticed Nathan watching her with undisguised admiration. His presence was somehow both unsettling and steadying, like the moment before a storm breaks. After an hour, she thanked the audience and set aside her guitar. Several guests approached with compliments, dropping coins into the small jar Esther had placed on a side table. When the crowd thinned, Nathan came forward. "That was beautiful," he said simply. "You have a remarkable gift." "Thank you," she replied. "Music has always been my solace. I can understand why." He seemed about to say more when a man approached, clapping him on the shoulder. "Nathan, there you are. We're heading out at first light tomorrow. Need to get back to check on that new bull before the weather turns." "Right, of course," Nathan said, though Thea detected reluctance in his voice. He turned back to her. "Miss Wilson, it seems I must leave Pueblo sooner than I'd hoped." Disappointment flickered through her, surprising in its intensity. "Safe travels, Mr. Irving." "Before I go," he hesitated, then pressed on. "Would you permit me to write to you? I'd very much like to continue our acquaintance." The request was proper, respectful, and completely unexpected. Thea knew the sensible answer was to decline. What future could there be with a man she barely knew, whose life was far from hers? Yet something in his steady gaze made her nod. "Yes, you may write to me." His smile was like sunrise. "Thank you. I promise not to abuse the privilege." After he left, Thea wondered if she'd made a foolish choice. Men had made promises before, only to forget them once out of sight. She told herself not to expect anything, to guard her heart against disappointment. Yet 2 weeks later, a letter arrived, carried by a ranch hand passing through Pueblo. Nathan's handwriting was surprisingly neat as he described his return journey, the condition of his ranch, and a foal born just after his arrival. He asked about her music, her adjustment to Colorado, and whether the hotel was busier now that the rodeo crowds had departed. Thea read the letter 3 times before carefully composing a response, which she gave to Esther to send with the next mail coach. Thus began a correspondence that continued through the changing seasons, each letter revealing more of themselves than perhaps they would have shared face to face. Nathan wrote of his daily struggles running the ranch, of his hopes to expand their operations, and of the beauty of the land he'd inherited. Thea shared her growing comfort in Pueblo, her memories of Tennessee, and her tentative dreams of someday having a place to call her own again. October brought an unexpected visitor to the Silver Star, Nathan's older brother Marcus, passing through on business. "So you're the musician my brother won't stop talking about," he said when Thea served his table. His resemblance to Nathan was clear, though his manner was more direct. "He asked me to ensure you're well." "That's very kind," Thea replied, feeling strangely touched by Nathan's concern. "Kind isn't the word I'd use," Marcus said with a knowing smile. "My brother hasn't been this interested in anything that wasn't 4-legged and grazing in years." Before departing the next morning, Marcus handed Thea a small package. "From Nathan. Said it was important." Inside, she found a hand-carved wooden pick for her guitar, polished to a warm glow with her initials etched into one side. The accompanying note reads simply, "Something to remember me by until we meet again. Yours, Nathan." The gift touched her deeply, and that night she wrote him a heartfelt thank you, confessing that his letters had become the brightest part of her days. Winter descended on Colorado with a vengeance that year. Heavy snows made travel difficult, and letters became less frequent as delivery grew unreliable. Thea worried about conditions at the Double I Ranch, imagining Nathan working in the bitter cold to keep his cattle alive through the harsh season. Christmas came and went, marked by a small celebration at the hotel. Thea played carols for the guests, her skills having improved with regular practice. Esther gifted her with a new shawl, and Henry surprised her with a book of sheet music he'd ordered from Denver. In January, a package arrived from Nathan containing a beautiful red woolen scarf and a letter describing Christmas at the ranch. He wrote of traditions shared with his hands, of the quiet beauty of snow-covered plains, and of how he'd thought of her while sitting beside the fire on Christmas Eve. "I find myself wanting to share these moments with you," he wrote, "to hear your thoughts and see your smile as you experience the ranch in winter. Perhaps this is forward of me, but I've come to care for you deeply through our correspondence. When spring arrives, I hope to visit Pueblo again, if you would welcome seeing me." Thea pressed the letter to her heart, allowing herself to acknowledge the feelings that had been growing since their first meeting. Nathan's honesty, his thoughtfulness, and his respect had gradually dismantled the walls she'd built around her heart after losing her parents. In her reply, she admitted her own attachment and her anticipation of his visit. The confession both frightened and exhilarated her. Opening herself to potential happiness also meant risking pain. February brought illness to Pueblo. Influenza swept through town, claiming several lives and keeping Thea busy, as the hotel became a temporary refuge for families with sick members. She worked tirelessly alongside Esther, bringing meals to those too weak to come downstairs and helping the local doctor when he visited. When the fever finally took hold of her in early March, it hit with devastating force. For days, she drifted in and out of consciousness, unaware that Esther had sent an urgent message to the Double I Ranch. Nathan received the news while checking fence lines after a late winter storm. He didn't hesitate, saddling his fastest horse and riding through the night, changing mounts at way stations to maintain his pace. The journey that normally took 3 days, he made in just over 1. Thea awoke to find him dozing in a chair beside her bed, his face haggard with exhaustion and worry. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. "Nathan," her voice was barely a whisper, his eyes flew open. "Thea, thank God." He moved to kneel beside the bed, taking her hand gently. "Mrs. Jenkins sent word you were ill. I came as soon as I heard. You rode all that way. For me." The effort of speaking sent her into a coughing fit. "Hush now," he soothed, helping her sip water from a glass on the bedside table. "Rest. I'll be here when you wake." And he was, for the 5 days it took her to regain enough strength to sit up properly. He read to her, told her stories of the ranch, and made her laugh despite her weakened state. Esther watched their interactions with approval, commenting that she'd never seen such devoted nursing from a man not yet bound by marriage vows. As Thea recovered, Nathan spoke more openly of his feelings. One evening, as spring rain tapped gently against her window, he confessed, "When I got that message, I realized something. The thought of a world without you in it was unbearable. I've been falling in love with you through every letter, every memory of our time together." Thea's heart raced at his words. "I've been fighting my feelings," she admitted. "After losing my parents, I was afraid to care too deeply for anyone." "I understand fear," he said, taking her hand, "but I've come to believe that the heart grows stronger when we risk it for the right reasons." By the time Thea was fully recovered, Nathan had been away from his ranch for nearly 3 weeks. Though he was reluctant to leave, his responsibilities couldn't be postponed any longer. The evening before his departure, he asked Thea to walk with him to the small church garden she'd once recommended to him. The spring air was fresh with possibility as they strolled side by side, her arm tucked in his. "I have something to ask you," Nathan said when they reached the garden, now beginning to bloom with early wildflowers. "But first, I want you to understand what I'm offering." He described life at the Double I, the hard work, the isolation, the beauty and challenges of ranch life. "It wouldn't be like living in town. The nearest neighbor is 5 miles away. Winters are harsh, and there are days when the work seems endless." "You make it sound so appealing," Thea teased gently. "I'm trying to be honest," he replied with a smile. I want you to know exactly what you'd be agreeing to." "And what would I be agreeing to?" Nathan took both her hands in his. "To come to the Double I, to give us a chance to court properly, with the hope, my hope, that you might one day consent to be my wife." Thea's breath caught. "You're asking me to leave Pueblo. I'm asking you to consider a new beginning with me." His eyes held hers steadily. "I know it's a lot to ask. You've built a life here, but I believe we could build something beautiful together." The proposal wasn't entirely unexpected, yet Thea found herself momentarily overwhelmed. She'd come to care deeply for Nathan, but leaving the safety of Pueblo for an uncertain future was daunting. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Of course." Though disappointment flickered in his eyes, he nodded understandingly. "I would never rush you into such a decision. Take all the time you need." They walked back to the hotel in thoughtful silence, the weight of possibility between them. That night, Thea played her guitar beside the open window, letting the melodies help order her thoughts. She thought of her parents, of the farm she'd lost, and of the safety she'd found in Pueblo. Then she thought of Nathan, his kindness, his integrity, and the way he looked at her as if she were precious beyond measure. By morning, her mind was clear. She found Nathan preparing to leave, his horse saddled outside the hotel. "I've made my decision," she said, approaching him in the lobby. His expression was carefully neutral. "And? I'll come to the Double I in 1 month's time. I owe Esther and Henry at least that much notice, and I need to prepare." The joy that transformed his face was answer enough to any lingering doubts. He restrained himself from embracing her in the public space, but his smile was radiant. "1 month," he agreed. "I'll send a wagon for your things and escort you myself." After he departed, Thea informed Esther and Henry of her plans. Though sad to lose her, they expressed genuine happiness for her future. "Nathan Irving is a good man," Henry said. "Hardworking, honest. He'll treat you right." "And you deserve happiness, child," Esther added, patting her hand. "After all you've been through, you deserve a chance at love." The month passed quickly, as Thea prepared for her new life. She purchased practical clothing suitable for ranch life, carefully packed her few treasured possessions, and continued to exchange letters with Nathan, who wrote of his preparations for her arrival and the excitement of his ranch hands at the prospect of having a woman's presence at the Double I. True to his word, Nathan arrived exactly 1 month later, driving a wagon for her belongings and leading a gentle mare he'd brought specifically for her to ride. "She's called Melody," he explained as Thea stroked the horse's velvet nose. "Seemed fitting for a musician." Their journey to the Double I took 3 days, traveling at a comfortable pace that allowed Nathan to show Thea the beauty of the Colorado landscape. They camped under stars brighter than any she'd seen, their conversations flowing easily from practical matters to shared dreams for the future. Nathan was scrupulously respectful, setting up her tent each night and maintaining a proper distance, despite the isolation of their travel. His consideration only deepened Thea's growing certainty that she had made the right choice. The Double I Ranch came into view on the afternoon of the 3rd day, a sprawling property nestled in a valley, with mountains visible in the distance. A 2-story house of sturdy timber stood as its center, surrounded by various outbuildings, corrals, and in the distance, herds of cattle grazing on lush spring grass. "It's beautiful," Thea breathed as they approached. "It's home," Nathan replied simply, a note of pride in his voice. They were greeted by Marcus and the ranch hands, who had prepared a welcome dinner in her honor. Martha, the elderly woman who cooked for the ranch, immediately took Thea under her wing, showing her to a comfortable room that had been freshly painted and furnished with feminine touches that betrayed Nathan's careful planning. That evening, after the meal and introductions were complete, Nathan invited Thea to step onto the wide porch that wrapped around the house. The setting sun painted the landscape in hues of gold and amber, and in the distance, cattle lowed softly as they settled for the night. "I know this is all new," Nathan said, leaning against the porch railing beside her. "And I meant what I said about courting properly. I want you to feel comfortable here, to get to know this life before making any permanent decisions." Thea appreciated his consideration. "It's overwhelming," she admitted, "but in a good way, like standing at the edge of something vast and wonderful." "That's how I felt the first time I saw you," he said softly. In the following weeks, Thea immersed herself in ranch life. She learned to ride Melody with confidence, helped Martha with cooking and preserving, and in the evenings, played her guitar for the appreciative ranch hands. Nathan taught her about cattle and horses, showing her every aspect of the operation with obvious pride. Their courtship progressed naturally, with respect and growing affection. Evening walks became a cherished ritual, and gradually, their conversations deepened to include hopes, fears, and shared dreams for the future. Nathan was patient, never pushing for more than Thea was ready to give, but his feelings were evident in every glance and gesture. Summer arrived, bringing long days of intense work as the ranch prepared for the fall roundup. Thea surprised herself with her adaptability, finding satisfaction in the rhythm of ranch life. Her music evolved too, incorporating the sounds and stories of her new home into compositions that captured the spirit of the Colorado plains. One evening in late July, Nathan asked Thea to accompany him to a special place on the property, a mesa overlooking the entire ranch, where wildflowers carpeted the ground in a riot of colors. He spread a blanket for them to sit on as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. "I used to come here with my father," he explained. "He told me once that of all the land he owned, this view was the most valuable because it reminded him of what mattered most, not the cattle or the buildings, but the people who made it a home." Thea listened, touched by his willingness to share such a personal memory. "When he died," Nathan continued, "I came here every day for weeks, trying to find guidance in this view he loved. I was terrified of failing him, of losing everything he'd built." "But you didn't fail," Thea said softly. "The double I is thriving under your care. It's more than just surviving now." He turned to face her fully. "Since you've been here, this place has come alive in ways I never imagined. You've brought music and laughter and a sense of possibility." From his pocket, he withdrew a small box. "I know we agreed to court properly, and if you need more time, I understand. But I've known since that rodeo in Pueblo that you were the one I wanted to share my life with." He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small diamond flanked by 2 sapphires. "This was my mother's. My father gave it to her when they decided to build this ranch together. I can think of no better hands for it now." Thea's eyes filled with tears as Nathan took her hand. "Thea Wilson, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Of building a life with me here, filled with rodeo lights and old guitars and whatever else the future might hold?" The answer came without hesitation, rising from a place of absolute certainty in her heart. "Yes, Nathan. Yes, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then cupped her face gently with both hands. "I love you," he whispered, the words carrying all the weight of genuine emotion. "And I love you," she replied, the words new on her lips but utterly true. Their first kiss was tender, a promise sealed as the sun transformed the sky into a canvas of reds and golds. When they finally pulled apart, Nathan kept her close, his forehead resting against hers as if unable to bear even that small separation. The news of their engagement was met with enthusiasm by everyone at the Double I. Martha immediately began planning a celebratory dinner, while Marcus clapped his brother on the back with obvious approval. Letters were sent to Esther and Henry, inviting them to the wedding planned for early September, before the demands of the fall roundup. Those weeks of preparation were among the happiest of Thea's life. She worked alongside Nathan during the days, learning more about ranch operations, and in the evenings, they planned their future together. They would live in the main house, which had originally been built for a family, with plenty of room for children they both hoped would come. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, with just enough autumn crispness in the air to suggest the changing of seasons. The ceremony was held on the ranch, with a local minister officiating and guests including Esther and Henry, neighboring ranchers, and all the double-I hands dressed in their Sunday best. Thea wore a simple white dress that Martha had helped her make, with wildflowers in her hair and her mother's silver locket around her neck. When she walked toward Nathan, who waited beneath an arch of twisted branches, his expression of wonder and love made her feel more beautiful than any fancy gown could have. The vows were straightforward and heartfelt, promises to love, honor, and cherish through all the seasons of life. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed her with a reverence that brought tears to the eyes of even the most weathered cowboys present. The celebration afterward continued well into the evening, with tables set up in the yard, lanterns hanging from tree branches, and an area cleared for dancing. Thea played her guitar for part of the night, singing songs of love and hope while Nathan watched her with undisguised adoration. As dusk settled over the land, colored lights were lit throughout the yard, reminiscent of the rodeo where they'd first danced together. Nathan led her to the center of the makeshift dance floor for a waltz, holding her closer than propriety had previously allowed. "Mrs. Irving," he murmured, the name new and precious. "Are you happy?" "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. "This place, these people, you've given me a home again, Nathan." Under the glow of the lanterns, with music playing softly in the background, he pulled her close and whispered, "I love you, Thea, with everything I am." The words, simple but profound, sealed the journey they had begun that day in Pueblo. From strangers to friends to lovers to spouses, each step had led them here, to this moment of perfect understanding beneath the rodeo lights with an old guitar playing nearby. Life at the double, I settled into a rhythm after the wedding. Thea embraced her role as the rancher's wife with enthusiasm, learning the business side of operations from Nathan while bringing her own talents to bear on making the house truly a home. Music remained a central part of her life, and on Sunday evenings, the ranch hands would gather in the main house to listen to her play. Their first Christmas as a married couple was marked by the blending of traditions, Thea's family customs from Tennessee, merged with the Irving traditions Nathan remembered from childhood. They decorated the house with pine boughs and berries, hung stockings by the fireplace, and prepared a feast for everyone on the ranch. On Christmas morning, Nathan presented Thea with a handcrafted music stand, carved with intricate patterns of wildflowers and horses. "So you always have a place for your songs," he explained. Thea's gift to him was more momentous the news that their family would be growing by summer's end. The joy that overwhelmed Nathan at her announcement was matched only by his immediate concern for her comfort and well-being, a tenderness that would characterize his approach to her pregnancy in the months that followed. Spring brought new calves to the ranch and preparations for the baby. Nathan insisted on expanding their bedroom and adding a nursery, working on the construction himself in the evenings after his ranch duties were complete. Thea sewed baby clothes and quilts, sometimes singing to her growing belly when she was alone, songs of welcome for the new life within her. Summer arrived with its intense heat and demanding work schedule. Nathan worried about Thea and her condition, but she insisted on maintaining as many of her responsibilities as possible, though she conceded to resting during the hottest part of the day. Martha hovered over her like a mother hen, ensuring she ate properly and didn't overexert herself. In late July, just as the worst of the summer heat began to wane, Thea went into labor. Nathan rode for the doctor immediately, but babies follow their own timetable, and by the time they returned, Martha had already delivered a healthy baby boy with a shock of wheat-colored hair like his father's. "Thomas," Thea whispered when Nathan first held his son, tears of joy streaming down his face. "After my father." "Thomas Nathan Irving," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "He's perfect, Thea, just perfect." Parenthood brought new dimensions to their relationship. Nathan revealed a gentle patience with their sometimes colicky son that endeared him to Thea even more. She found deeper reserves of strength within herself as she balanced motherhood with her responsibilities to the ranch, and their partnership grew stronger through the shared joys and challenges of raising Thomas. As their son grew from infant to toddler, the double I prospered under their joint management. Nathan's innovative breeding programs improved their stock, while Thea's organizational skills streamlined operations and accounting. Together, they built on the foundation Nathan's father had created, expanding the ranch's reputation throughout Colorado territory. Thomas's second birthday coincided with a particularly successful year for the Double I. To celebrate both milestones, Nathan and Thea decided to attend the Pueblo Rodeo, once again returning to the place where their story had begun. The town had grown in the years since Thea had left, but the Silver Star Hotel remained unchanged, with Esther and Henry greeting them warmly upon their arrival. Thomas was immediately spoiled with attention and sweets, his cherubic face winning hearts just as easily as his father's quiet charm had once done. The rodeo was bigger than before, with competitors from as far away as Texas and Wyoming. Though Nathan had retired from competitive riding to focus on ranching, he was recognized by many of the older cowboys, who came to pay their respects to the former champion. On the second evening, after Thomas had been put to bed under Esther's watchful eye, Nathan led Thea to the same hill where they had first really talked years before. The colored lights of the rodeo stretched out below them, reflecting in the river just as they had that night. "You ever miss it?" Thea asked as they settled on the grass. "The competition, the travel?" "Not for a moment," Nathan answered without hesitation. "Everything I want is at the Double I now. You, Thomas, our life together, it's more than I ever dreamed possible." As darkness deepened around them, Nathan pulled Thea close against the evening chill. "Do you remember the first time we danced?" he asked, his breath warm against her hair. "Of course. Right down there under lights just like these." "I knew then," he confessed. "When you were in my arms, moving to that music, I knew you were the one I wanted to build a life with. I just wasn't sure you'd ever want the same." Thea turned in his embrace to face him. And now, his smile was tender in the faint light. "Now I thank God every day that you took a chance on a dusty cowboy with nothing to offer but his heart and a piece of land." "Nothing to offer," she laughed softly. "You gave me everything, Nathan. A home when I had none, love when I thought I'd never feel it again, a family when mine was lost." She traced the familiar lines of his face with gentle fingers. "You saved me." "We saved each other," he corrected, capturing her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "And we'll keep doing so every day for the rest of our lives." Under the rodeo lights, with memories of their beginning surrounding them, Nathan pulled her close and whispered, "I love you, Thea Irving. More today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." "And I love you," she replied, the words as true and clear as the first time she'd spoken them. Always and completely. They returned to the Double I after the rodeo with renewed appreciation for the life they'd built together. The years that followed brought more children. A daughter, Sarah, arrived 2 years after their Pueblo visit, followed by another son, James, 3 years later. The ranch expanded with their family, adding land and cattle as the Irving name became synonymous with quality throughout the West. Thea never stopped playing her guitar. Her music evolved over the years, incorporating the stories of their life together, the beauty of the Colorado landscape, and the growth of their children. She composed lullabies for each baby, trail songs for Nathan when he was away on cattle drives, and celebration pieces for anniversaries and birthdays. Nathan continued to run the ranch with integrity and innovation, teaching their children the value of hard work and the importance of family. As Thomas grew old enough to show interest in ranch operations, Nathan began including him in decisions and responsibilities, just as his own father had done with him. By their 10th anniversary, the Double I had become one of the most successful operations in Colorado. What had once been a struggling ranch recovering from the loss of its founder was now a thriving enterprise with a reputation for fair dealing and superior stock. To mark the occasion, Nathan surprised Thea with a grand piano, delivered from Denver, an extravagance that left her speechless with joy. That evening, after the children were asleep, she played for him in their parlor, her fingers finding melodies that spoke of their decade together. "Did you ever imagine this?" Nathan asked as she finished playing, gesturing to encompass their home, their success, their family. "That day when you stepped off the train in Pueblo, did you ever think life could bring you here?" Thea considered the question thoughtfully. "I hoped for safety then, for a quiet life where grief might eventually fade. I never dared hope for such happiness." She moved to sit beside him on the sofa. "And you? Did the confirmed bachelor cowboy ever imagine being surrounded by children and responsibility?" "Not until I saw a certain auburn-haired woman with sad eyes and the voice of an angel," he admitted with a smile. "Then, suddenly, I could imagine nothing else." Their life wasn't without challenges. Droughts threatened the cattle, economic downturns affected prices, and there were occasional conflicts with neighboring ranchers over water rights or grazing boundaries. Through it all, their partnership remained strong, each contributing their strengths to overcome whatever difficulties arose. As their children grew, so did the legacy they were building. Thomas showed Nathan's natural affinity for horses and cattle management. Sarah inherited Thea's musical talent, along with a sharp mind for numbers that made her invaluable in the ranch office. Young James combined both parents' traits with a curious spirit that led him to explore every inch of the Double I's expanding boundaries. By their 20th anniversary, Nathan's hair had begun to silver at the temples, and fine lines marked the corners of Thea's eyes, evidence of 2 decades of laughter, concern, and life lived fully. They celebrated quietly, with a private dinner after the children had gone to bed. 20 years, Nathan marveled, raising his glass to Thea across the table. The best 20 years any man could ask for. "It went so fast," she replied, her eyes reflecting the candlelight. "Sometimes I still feel like that girl from Tennessee, unsure and alone." "Never alone again," he promised, reaching for her hand. "Not as long as I draw breath." Later that night, they stood on the porch of the home they had built together, looking out over the ranch bathed in moonlight. The sounds of sleeping cattle, the distant call of a night bird, and the gentle creaking of the windmill created a familiar symphony that had become the soundtrack of their life. Nathan wrapped his arms around Thea from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I have something for you," he murmured, pressing a small package into her hands. Inside, she found a locket similar to her mother's, which had finally worn beyond repair a few years earlier. This one was silver too, but newly made and engraved with their initials. When opened, it contained miniature photographs of their 3 children. "So you always carry them with you," Nathan explained as tears filled her eyes. "Just as you carried the memory of your parents." Thea turned in his arms, the locket clutched in her hand. "How do you always know exactly what my heart needs?" "Because your heart has been my study for 20 years, he replied simply. "Knowing you, loving you, it's the work of my life, Thea." Under the vast Colorado sky, with the ranch quiet around them, Nathan pulled her close and said, "I love you." The words unchanged in their sincerity despite the thousands of times they'd been spoken between them. "And I love you," Thea answered, rising on tiptoe to kiss him with the same tenderness that had marked their first embrace beneath the rodeo lights so many years before. Their story continued to unfold against the backdrop of a changing West. As railways expanded and cities grew, the isolated ranch life gradually connected more with the wider world. Thomas eventually took over the main operations of the Double I, allowing Nathan and Thea to enjoy a more relaxed pace in their later years. They never lost their love of music or horses. Even as age began to limit Nathan's time in the saddle, he still rode daily, and Thea's fingers remained nimble on guitar strings and piano keys. Their home was always filled with music, laughter, and eventually, grandchildren who delighted in their grandmother's songs and grandfather's stories of rodeo glory days. On quiet evenings, they often sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the land they had nurtured together. Sometimes they spoke of the past of that first meeting in Pueblo, of letters exchanged during a snowy winter, of children born and raised on Double I soil. Other times they simply existed in comfortable silence, the depth of their connection requiring no words. Their love story, begun under rodeo lights with an old guitar playing nearby, became part of the ranch's heritage, a tale of courage, second chances, and the power of choosing to build something beautiful together. It was a legacy as enduring as the land itself, passed down through generations of Irvings who would continue to call the Double I home. For Nathan and Thea, it remained the greatest adventure of their lives, the journey from strangers to soulmates, from broken pasts to a shared future, always moving forward together under the vast Colorado sky that had witnessed their beginning and would watch over their forever.